Hello, good morning, and many thanks indeed for joining us here on Morning Prime, the 22nd of February 2023. I'm glad that you've chosen KTN News as your channel to inform you. Today is Wednesday. Every Wednesday you have Global Today coming your way, where we take an incisive analysis of what is happening on matters diplomacy, also looking at matters security and international affairs, foreign policy as well. We're joined by our usual team. This is Dr. Hassan Kaneje, who is the director of the Horn Institute. Also, we do have with us Ahmed Hashi, who is a governance and policy analyst. We do have with us as well Professor Peter Kagwanja, who is the CEO of Africa Policy Institute, and momentarily we'll be joined by Noah Midamba, who is a foreign policy and, of course, defense analyst and a senior partner with Glossip Concepts. We have a lot to cover today, also being the anniversary of Dusit. We remember what really happened that material day on 22nd of February. Today we have a very special report also in the Standard regarding that and revelations of what really happened. Blow-by-blow account of that tragedy at Dusit. We shall be looking at that, following also and putting tails on the Africa Union Summit, the deliberations of that is ongoing there right now. And we shall be looking as well at the situation in DRC and Rwanda, where we have President Tshisekedi who's calling for Rwanda to be sanctioned. What does that really mean? These are some of the stories that we'll be looking at this morning. But first, let me just hear from our panelists just to hear and welcome Dr. Kaneje, who was away in Uganda. Can tell us what was happening in Uganda, what he took in Uganda, and what some of yes, sentimental value items that he's brought for us as well from Uganda. Good morning.
Good morning, Dibal.
Yes.
I'm happy to be back. And though Kenya is a little drier than Uganda is, I think Uganda is just a little bit more blessed when it comes to rains. But that's also a lesson for us. Maybe we need to have some long-term plans. I was there, on a workshop on sexual terrorism, and we come from a region. Sexual terrorism. Yes.
Okay.
Especially when it comes to the assisting to rehabilitate the victims of sexual terrorism. Yes, it is something that has not, gotten enough attention. And coming from a region that has been plagued with conflict and where rape has been used as an instrument of war, I think it was very important that that kind of discussion, of course, is held. It was organized by International Institute for Justice and Rule of Law, and I think quite a number of ideas were put together and assisting different jurisdictions in dealing with it. So I'm back and I'm ready to have us discuss some things to do with our country as well as our region.
Sure.
Yes.
Okay, let's hear from Ahmed Hashi. Good morning, good to see you.
Good morning, Demao. Can we say Rotia Sebu, Chi Sebu, Kali Sebu, Ugamba Chewe. I think that I love, Uganda. It's a very beautiful language.
By the way, yesterday was International Mother's Tongue Day.
Yes, Mother's Tongue Day. So, there's two languages I love, the Kisis and the Bagandas. It's like an orchestra. When people talk, you think it's a music hall. Yes. Very beautiful language. My brother got married the other day, and I attended his wedding. I want to welcome Nimao and Yusuf to marriage life. I wish them all the best. I even packed some of the food and took it. I'm a bachelor at the bar, but my mother is making sure that changes soon. Apart from that, I was over in Kajiado. That's where I'm from, the Bal. Mimi sijatoka mahali ingine, nimetoka hapa kwa the Ma, hao ndio wamenilea. Na nikaenda nikakata nywele, umeona. When you go to the elders, you have to go with a clean head. You don't go there with an afro. You'll be in trouble. Because, you have to put your head like this.
For you to be blessed.
For you to be blessed. So I was blessed. I drank a lot of milk, and I'm back, and I hope my hair grows
All right, let's hear from Professor Kagwaja.
I'm not sure that milk was halal.
All milk is halal.
Very good. Asante, thank you very much, Dibal, for the invite again. We don't take this for granted that we are gracing this very prestigious forum.
Yes.
Every Wednesday. There are very many people who are telling me that they like, just through tweets and emails and SMSs and WhatsApp messages, they say that we are watching you. So I would like to thank those who are watching us, and we hope we'll make a difference in terms of their thinking about these matters. Today is a big day for me. My friend Mohammed El Duma from Sudan is in town.
Good.
We are hosting IGAD migration and displacement conference somewhere in town. So it's going to be a very big day for us and the region. People from across the IGAD region, which is about 9 or so countries. So it's a great day. And basically it's also a great week, as you've said. The AU summit is on, and a lot of things happening. It's a good time to review. Basically, after 2023, it's about 20 years since the launch of the
State of Act.
Yeah, so it is really an auspicious moment for us to discuss the African Union and the peace and security architecture, and what difference it has made, or it is simply another club of leaders who are seeking their own interests and so on. So that's a very very eventful week, I think, we have ahead of us.
Right, it is. Okay, we shall hear from Normi Damba later. For now, let's see what is fresh off the press today, beginning with the Standard, guys. Revisiting, of course, Dusit and what really happened there. This is quite a revelation there on the front page of the Standard, and you have a full expose there, or details tucked away on page 8 of the Standard. So we just pick it up there. Reveals secrets of Dusit terror raid is what we have as a splash today on the front page of the Standard. A complex web, it says. Investigators have revealed to the High Court sitting in Nairobi the movements, communication, and the faces behind the heinous attack on a Nairobi hotel in January 2019 after combing through Facebook. 177 SIM cards, M-Pesa transactions, calls, and texts revealed. Secrets of the Dusit terror raid is what is on the front page of the Standard there. If you just pick it up, that is what we have on the front page of the Standard there. Complex web investigators have revealed to the High Court sitting in Nairobi the movements, communication, the faces behind the heinous attack on a Nairobi hotel in January 2019 after coming through Facebook. 177 SIM cards, M-Pesa transactions, calls, and texts. And we have 25 the number of people killed in the Dusit 2 terror attack, blamed on Somalia group Al-Shabaab in January 2019. We have 806, 900, that is the amount there, that is Ali Salim Gichunge, the leader of the Dusit D2 attackers, received via M-Pesa. And the attacker's face is also splashed here. We have Ali Salim Kishunge, we have Osman Ibrahim Gedi, we have Siyat Omar Abdi, we have Mahir Khalid Riziki. And the story continues there. You can find it on page 8 of the Standard. Heartbreak that awaits CAS hopefuls. The next few weeks will see a lot of gnashing of teeth as President Ruto names chief administrative secretaries whose slots are too few for the big number of hopefuls. That is the story to follow on page 4 of the Standard. Sabina, why Jubilee Party is in problems? Why Jubilee Party is in problems? Nominated MP Sabina Chege says former President Uhuru's abandonment of duty, both as Azimio Coalition Council Chair and the Jubilee leader, is driving her party into political irrelevance. You have that story tucked on page 6 and 7 of the Standard this morning. Enterprise is another pull-out magazine that you want to actually grab a copy and read all about it. How creative data can unlock opportunities there. They are gold mines for you. Agony of head teachers rejected at new schools. Several head teachers and principals in parts of Nyanza who were transferred to new institutions are on the edge after they were rejected by a section of parents and schools boards. You have this story on page 12. This is the Standard for you. Let me just hark back there to the Daily Nation, where there is a storm over constituency boundaries. That is what we have as a splash there. Proponents of 1 person, 1 shilling campaign want more units. Interesting, and that is what the flag is reading here. You can follow the story there on page 4. Race against time, review of borders has stalled because of a dysfunctional electoral commission, a dispute over a secret crucial document, and a supremacy wars between rival political formations. And state jobs. Raila accuses Ruto of tribalism. Azimio leader accuses president of sidelining communities that voted against him in the 2022 general election. This is what he says. Quote unquote, we have seen Ruto and his deputy handing their respective communities more than 5 cabinet slots each, while others have none. Also, protest over plan to abolish allowance. That is, Salaries and Remuneration Commission has invited public comments on its proposal to abolish the non-practicing allowance in public service. Also, cheaper food on the way as state allows duty-free imports. And DCI rules out sniper bullet wars from pistol. DCI says of NHIF workers shooting. This is a story you can follow on page 3 of the Daily Nation today. Unga juu, mafuta juu. That is some people protesting about the high cost of living. But now that is bound to change as the government now opens doors for duty-free imports. This is the Daily Nation. The Star. Uhuru faction calls NDC to sack rebels. Kioni calls on top party organ in a fight-back plan to counter Jubilee takeover by Ruto allied team. And this story continues on page 4 and 5 of the Star this morning. And also Ruto tough balancing act in CAS jobs. Some of the faces that have been shortlisted are there. You can follow the story on page 6 of the Star. Women MPs to wear locally designed clothes to boost SMEs. Made in Kenya nominated MP Irene Mayaka, Catherine Muma, nominated Senator Maureen Mutinda, nominated Senator Esther Okenyuri, nominated Senator Hamida Kibwana, and nominated Senator Veronica Maina. And the Kenya Women Parliamentary Association Executive Director Mercy Mwangi, after a press briefing by the women parliamentarians in Nairobi yesterday. There they were, looking dapper in those African regalia there. And from street to Nakuru to medic who mentors other street boys. Also, SRC moves to abolish non-practice allowance for medics and judges. This is the stuff for you. We have now People Daily. Raila critics in CAS shortlist. Who will it be? Ruto likely to get free hand in picking candidates who will tame his rival. He also has a large pool of experts, allies to choose from as he seeks to consolidate government. And you have the full report on page 4 of the People Daily this morning. Also, Azimio rally set for City Centre today. Opposition push for a reduction in cost of living and reforming IBC to be held in Jivanji Gardens in CBD. This story continues on page 2 of the People Daily today. He is unrelenting with his rallies. Let's buckle down to see what Taifa Leo is holding for us. Uhuru alifagia pesa kistaafu. That is a question they're asking. Bunge linachunguza matumizi ya mabilioni ya fedha mwisho wa utawala wa Uhuru. Madai ya ubadhirifu. Wabunge wameanzisha kuchunguza madai kwamba serikali ya Rais mstaafu Uhuru Kenyatta ilitumia bilioni 55 bila idhini ya bunge, miezi miwili kabla ya kiongozi huyo kuondoka mamlakani mnamo Septemba 13, 2022. That is the story that you want to follow on page 2 of Taifa Leo. Raila achanganya magavana. You can follow the story on page 3. And Kenya Shujaa yatua America. You can follow that story in the story inside the sports pages of the Taifa Leo this morning. As we back down to Business Daily, this is a splash that you're waking up to on the front page of the Business Daily this morning. Top security organ approved purchase of Telkom for 125 shillings there. National Security Council allowed Hello deal in April. And you have the PE firm refunded 51 million shillings, $1 billion, I should say, via a 3-year treasury bond. Just to give you a deeper understanding there, it says that Kenya's top security organ approved the state acquisition of Telkom Kenya for $1. That is 125.6 shillings from a UK-based private equity fund in a deal that has kicked up a storm in Parliament. Confidential treasury documents sent by the Business Daily indicate that the National Security Council, NSC, approved the purchase of the 60% stake from Helios partners on grounds of risk to national security. The deal, Kenya reimbursed Helios $51 million through a 3-year government bond for shareholder loans. The private equity fund provided Telkom Kenya to keep the loss-making entity afloat. And now we know what really happened with this Telkom. Helios now, they've walked away from that deal. All the richer, and we left all the poor.
Well,
really?
You know that in the developing world, when you hear about privatization, you probably need to turn that word into thugization rather than privatization. Because now you go and employ a couple of blue-eyed blonde people from London, you get a consulting company on the Thames, and then you come back and buy the property here, or the state, what the state owned, for peanuts. That's what the IMF and the World Bank used to do in the 80s under structural adjustment. And a lot of corrupt people in this town made a killing out of buying parastatals for maybe 5%. It's worth. I'm a big fan of privatization. It brings discipline, it makes things work, there's accountability. We want the forces of the free market to work. But there's such a thing as, fair trade. And there's such a thing as ethics in capitalism. And I put it to you, that it's very, very important that publicly owned institutions do not fall into the hands of our politicians and their friends in the private sector. I probably think that we need a czar, a very independent-minded person to oversee these kinds of things.
Excuse me.
In the advanced capitalist countries, there's always a supervisor of the banks who is more powerful than even the prime minister or the president of that country. It's a transparent system. What we want is for at the end of the day, for these economic policies to work for the common Ali, for the common Okello, for the common Joroge, for the Wamboi. That's what we want. We want this thing to come down to the grassroots level. And that's the philosophy, of the president. It's called the hustler movement. He wants us to build from the ground up. Every economic policy that the president has come up with is from the top down. We have to be a bit honest about our country. Whether you support the political party or you support the government or not is beside the point. We were told that trickle-down, it's a false narrative at the campaign, that the trickle-down economics, which is groundless in African economies. I've studied those books. And now we see the dismantling of the state into a cost-cutting, privatization, job losses. There is nothing bad with providing a lean government that can work for the people's market. so that the economy can produce jobs. But Debal, cutting down social programs and economic programs for the least disadvantaged in this society. In my mind, Debal is not economic policy, it's voodoo politics. And I think, Debal, that it's very important that in a country today, Kenya, that everybody is suffering from the top to the bottom, where there's zero jobs, zero investment, the country is bankrupt. President's telling us that there's no money in this country, that President Uhuru has taken all the money to whatever he has taken it. The political class are still fighting, Debal, over last year's election, while the people of Kenya are sitting at home eating maharagwe alone because there's no money. Parents and Debal, parents, I'm here, my mother lives here in South Sea. And Debal, parents don't have money to give children food, proper food. They're scrimping and saving. The country is in a very bad place. And Debal, rhetoric is not going to help us. Telling us to wait is not going to help us. We need to see the government make sure that its citizens are not going to break over the economy of this country.
Right, thank you. Right, thank you. Well, does it really take you back to where we were before with the Grand Regency, when it was also sold for a song? And I think we were played as a country. This is exactly what has happened to Telkom, just briefly, and then we'll continue. I know this is besides what we were supposed to be, but this is in the headlines today.
Yeah, it is important to highlight some of these issues, not because that there is corruption or that, but it is good to understand the policies and the way they are implemented by the ruling elite, for that matter. Privatization, as it has been said, is a double-edged sword. It can be good or it can be bad, depending on what it is that you are privatizing. And you must always know, I mean, if you stand on the side of the nation and not on the side of your class or those you are affiliated to, then you know for sure there are two things. There are those things that you can privatize, but there are the so-called towering heights of the economy. You can never privatize those unless you're a fool. You don't give your bedroom to guests.
Right.
That you don't. Wisdom requires that you don't give your bedroom to guests. You keep that. No, I'm not talking about the many bedrooms you have, Professor. I'm talking about.
He has a big house.
You have a big house where you don't know. I don't know which number of the bedroom you sleep in, but I'm talking about the house that we know, which has only one bedroom and possibly some guest places. Now, if you're talking about areas of energy, areas of water, right? You were talking about if you have a nuclear energy plant in the country, that one you don't privatize. You cannot privatize the military, of course, and the security docket. You cannot, there are quite a number of towering heights without enumerating them. That you keep. But I think the debate on privatization in Kenya actually targets the towering heights because they are the cash cows. The energy sector, for example, is a big debate. And who in the world is privatizing their private sector?
But the question we need to ask, even if we are privatizing, who does all these negotiations? Because it seems to be all skewed on one end.
I'm making 2 points. The first point is to know what to privatize and what not to privatize. That's the first point. The second point is, what process do you follow to privatize? Who actually is winning the private companies? Then you find it's a small cartel, as Hashi tried to put it. And we saw it in the 1990s, the Moi regime, when we lost most of our prime. Look at the losses, and it's the common person who loses, the railway. We privatized the railway, and it collapsed.
Yes.
So we had to pay, now we have to have a new railway and to use the military to rehabilitate the other one because there was no money to bring that railway back. So there is a lot of, not corruption really, syndicates. These are serious syndicates that are talking about. So I don't smile when I hear privatization, even though I know for sure that there are sectors that would do better,
of course,
in the hands of the private individual. Look at the wars over water, the water wars in Kenya. The water wars in Kenya are about privatization without any good procedure or good processes and without transparency and accountability. So we really need to think very hard about this, and it's not something that you just apply a knee-jerk kind of a response to. So privatization is a double-edged sword. It can push us forward or actually destroy us.
All right, so what do you have to say when this was actually proposed by the National Security Council, approving the purchase of the 60% stake from Helios partners on grounds of risk to national security?
The concept of national security, the BAL, is amorphous. It is when you sit in the council, the Security Council, and you know that this is in the interest of your country, and you evoke national security. Because nobody has any definition of national security. This is in the interest of our national security. What is the national security involved? So the BAL governments evoke that word to make sure that the sovereignty of the republic is maintained. And this is why we give elected governments this choice to protect our political, economic, social, cultural rights. The BAL, before I pass it on to my learned seniors on the left here, I just want to say one thing. You saw the president get an interview the other day about his economic model of how he wants Kenya to move forward. And the BAL, he was complaining about the terms of sovereign credit. You know, about the international, the IMF and all these groups give 1% or 0.5% to the big capitalist countries because they've got more shares in the IMF and in the World Bank, and they put more money in it. And we pay maybe 10%. So the BAL, if your economic model is to seek justice from the international financial system, the BAL, I think that maybe you're on a wild goose chase. It's very simple, the BAL, how we need to develop our economy in this region. We need to take a very long pipe, and I want to make it very simple. We need to go to the Inga Dam to put electricity there, put 2 magnets, get the turbine running, then get everybody to get a sovereign credit to bring electricity to the eastern region of Africa. And the BAL, we need to bring down the borders, we need to free movement of labor, and we need free movement of capital, and we need one currency. We need to look towards our region for the economic growth, the BAL. If we look into the international system and ask for it to be fair, the BAL, what we're doing is knocking at the door, and nobody's going to open that door for us. The BAL, the international system, as they put it in Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, and my professor here will tell me, will remind me of that sentence was quite brutish. Nasty, short, and brutish. Yes. I rest my case.
Let's hear from Dr. Hassan.
Yeah, the BAL, you know, I think everyone who serves in government need to undertake a course on national interest and national security as a matter of necessity. And we've become so laissez-faire in approach to issues of national importance that we have actually forgotten what it takes to make statecraft. There are a number of things that in a country, you know, may comprise or constitute national security or national interest. And at the center of it is critical infrastructure. There's a reason why the United States has been reluctant to sell certain aspects of its own economy, including ports and stuff like that, to the Chinese. There's a reason why they resist any attempts, perhaps, for foreigners to even invest in aviation in the United States, because that threatens national security. Now, the reason is you don't want to put yourself in a place where you're going to be exclusively or overwhelmingly vulnerable or dependent on somebody else. For instance, we can decide to privatize the port of Mombasa today. What we would have done is literally constrain our own ability, first of all, to determine what comes in, how it comes in. We don't have control over it. It's not just about physical security, because I think an average Kenyan, when we think about national security, they think is about just protecting the physical bodies. No. Three, you have aspects of telecommunications. You see, if you give someone who might not loyal or patriotic to your country an ability to listen to you and what you do, including your bedroom, you can just as well walk naked in the streets, because there's nothing you're hiding. There's nothing you can plan. Things to do with transport, for instance. These are very, very important aspects. And to the extent that, there isn't sufficient appreciation of what constitutes, the aspects that constitutes national security and national interest, I think is what is contributing to the kind of approach where we seem to be, of course, moving very fast to nationalize everything, or rather to privatize everything. Now, this is not to suggest that we have to just, stay or fund projects that have failed. I think is what Americans say, throwing good money after bad money. Okay, but we need to, first of all, find out, establish what exactly has happened. Why are they not working? And how important is it to the national interest and national security of Kenya? Second, if there are aspects of it or sections of it that we need to privatize, what are they and at what cost? Because what has happened is sometimes privatizing premium infrastructure on a chip, only to end up buying cheap infrastructure at a premium price later on, when we realize that idea was very bad. And I think that's the direction we may be moving. If we move very quickly to privatize things, we're going to regret, or at a later date, the taxpayers are going to be forced to pay premium price to buy them back when they realize the other story is not working.
That's the whole point.
And I think it's very important that we are very, very careful in the way we go about it. It happens elsewhere in the world. It's happening in the United States. They've been extremely reluctant. It happens in China and also advanced economies, as well as any country that employs a rational decision making, does cost-benefit analysis, but that also reflects its own unique peculiarities of national international security. Because outside that framework, I think we're going to really undertake very kind of voodoo exercises that we're going to regret.
Right, thank you. Thank you, Dr. Let me welcome Professor Naomi Dambo back. Good to see you.
Thank you.
It seems you and Arsene Kanenje, you were actually reading from the same memo on a trip to Uganda. I don't know if you were the same venue or different
yeah, we are
cities.
different. Yeah, I'm actually doing something that's very exciting, which is I'm teaching 3 graduate classes at Cavendish University in Uganda, 1 PhD and 2 masters. And it's amazing. I'm teaching from here, by the way, and I have an assistant professor there that is assisting. It happened that the subject we're dealing with now is one of the subjects we're teaching. And so it is incredible. Let me begin the bow by saying Thomas Jefferson, one of the wisest people in America, said that when people fear the government, there is tyranny. And when the government fear the people, there is liberty. And so, Cassie and I have been repeating what Abraham Lincoln said, government of
the people.
Repeat.
Government of the people, by the people,
and for the people. There is nothing sort of that, that we can talk about communism, we can talk about open market, we can talk about, but government is of the people, and it is the people interest that we protect. And therefore, my point is very clear. These folks have made very good point to my colleagues. If we decide this is what we want to do, number one, you need to be transparent. Why are we doing it? And at what cost? And what is the cost-benefit analysis we are going to do? Kenya people need to hear that. And secondly, who is involved in terms of transaction analysis? How is it going to be done? Who's going to sit on the table to make decisions. Unless we bring Kenya together, I mean, bringing Kenya together does not mean everybody sit in the same room. It is reaching out to everybody and speaking on behalf of the people so that the people feel comfortable that my government represents the best interest, my best interest and my family interest. This is what it comes to. Because this kind of thing has serious implications. We talk about cybersecurity, we talk about international relations, we're talking about homeland security, and now we're talking about the weather, the impact of the weather. Point is, each of transitions taking place in Africa is very tough, because we talk about that. The government transition, one thing to another, public, even university transitions are not easy. And such that the new government is coming in with an agenda. The previous government had an agenda, but they need to be synergized. There need to be a relationship between who is leaving and what is it they're leaving. You know, why am I saying that? Right now, as we're talking, Kenya is the 4th largest economy in sub-Saharan Africa and the 6th largest in the continent of Africa. The projection for next year is that Angola and also Ethiopia is going to surpass Kenya. So Kenya is going to move to number 6. And then the total Africa, we're going to move to number 8 from where we are. Kenya is highly respected around the world because of what we have done. So we have been able to secure low interest loan, you know, in order to build our country. But now, IMF, World Bank, is 10% interest rate. The president was talking about that the other day. And the developed countries like Sweden can borrow at less than 0.5% from International Monetary Fund. So when you look at billions that we are borrowing, and when you put it all together, how is going to pay for it? You know, so these are the issues, the critical issues that every Kenyan citizen need to hear, that our government is making the right decision on our behalf. They're not perfect. None of us is perfect. But let's make sure that we have a collective, responsible decision making with capable, the best that we can get out of Kenya to negotiate this and to be so transparent so that we know what's going on from A to Z.
Indeed, indeed. Thank you very much. Unless you have any other comment on that, we can proceed and also take a keener look on what we have on the front page of the Standard, just revisiting this particular tragedy that happened here in the country. And there's quite a revelation there, an intense, rich stream of information that you have in the Standard today regarding Dusit terror attack. Investigators have revealed to the High Court sitting in Nairobi the movements, communication, and the faces behind, if you may have the paper back, the heinous attack on a Nairobi hotel in January 2019 after combing through Facebook, 177 SIM cards, M-Pesa transactions, calls and texts. And this story is well laid out on page 8 of the Standard today. Well, this is happening while we can see the resurgence of Al-Shabaab. We've been discussing this largely here for the past, I think, 2 shows or 3, on how the ugly head of Al-Shabaab, it's rearing back, and we can feel its effect so far in Somalia, the terrors that have been happening. And we've had also warnings from the U.S. Embassy, just telling us or alerting the country that, you know, terrorism is still very active. We should be aware of that, whatever we're going for shoppings as well. And when we have the beginning of the year, from January to around April, March, May, is when these activities from the terrorists also really happen. Let's just begin with you, Hashi.
Well, Debal, thank you. You know, I said this before. Professor Kabanja and I have said this before, actually. I think that this country should go into red alert. Last time I said it should be on yellow alert, and
yes,
that's what the country did, Debal. The government is watching this show. should take us to Mombasa for the weekend. The second thing is Debal. Now we need to go to the red light because the terrorists, Debal, are going to go, and I'm saying this again on national TV, there's going to be a massive firefight in Mogadishu in the next 90 days. And the Al-Shabaab is going to attempt to overthrow the government of Hassan Sheikh, Debal. I'm putting this on the table because I'm going to be called up on it in 90 days. Every one of them has come to Mogadishu, and they're going to go down to Kismayo, and they're going to go through Mandera, and they're going to go through the villages on the border. And Debal, they're going to try and cause a threat. You know, Debal, the Kenya security services have disrupted many attempts to come into Kenya and to cause trouble. And Debal, at the end of the day, the solution to this problem, Debal, is not the buffer zone in Kismayo. That's not the solution to this. The solution to all problems is to create a state in Mogadishu, in the political class there, to take care of their own security. And you know, Kenya is doing something very important, and I want to say kudos to President Ruto. President Ruto yesterday said he was going to support President Hassan Sheikh's inclusion into the East African Union. Because Debal, we're going to have our generals in the East African Union High Command, and we're going to integrate our armies, and we're not going to, Somalia is not going to invade us in the future because irredentism will be dead once we have regional citizenship in this region. We will be trading more than thinking about taking each other's land. My friend there can just cross Uganda there and meet his cousin across the border. And there's no problem. This young man here can go to Alur. He can have fish with his cousins there. If our professor any cousins across the border, I hope he doesn't. I have a lot. So, Debal, I want to put it to you at the end of the day. Sisi ni wa Afrika. So the Somali people will be brought in, and Debal, they will teach us one or two things about business. Third point, Debal, is very, very important for us to completely reform the African Union as East Africans. Debal, you've seen what the other day we went there. The Arab League is actually better than the African Union. Do you know why? That's my opinion. I've got great passion and love for the African Union as a Pan-Africanist, you know. But Debal, you know, they said that Mali and all these other countries cannot come into the session. They kicked out the Israeli delegation, rightly so. But Debal, there is no commitment as to why coup d'etats happen in this region, in our continent, and what is the response of the African Union, and the Peace and Security Council, will it be given teeth to start doing what it's supposed to do? These are urgent questions. South Africa is doing military maneuvers with Russia and India and other countries on the tip of the sea. They have submarines, South Africans. They have warships. Debal, we need to get these resources into an African context so that we can deal with the issues of African solutions for African problems. And I know that my learned seniors wants to jet in. Let me make the last point. We need to start our hopes and our future, Debal, are in the East African community. There's no other, we don't have any other choice. And as long as we're this big bloc in the East African community and Ethiopia is coming, we can influence the African Union to the right. It will be the biggest regional power bloc inside the African Union with about 350 million people. We can influence Africa in such major ways that we can transform our economies and our politics.
All right, let me hear from Dr. Hassan Kanenje. Just looking back from where we were, and right now with these revelations that are there, of course, and the ugly head of Al-Shabaab coming back, and the yellow alerts we've been getting, now we're moving to the red alert as well. What have you been able to decipher so far, even from Dusit, the attack itself?
Debal, I have a few things to say about this. Technology has provided enormous potential for economies to grow. And Kenya, when it comes to tech, especially in terms of certain applications, I think has been hailed one of the leaders in, for instance, M-Pesa transactions. We've been able, by use of this technology, to bank almost every Kenyan and made life a lot easier. At the same time, the same technology is being exploited by those who wish us harm and by terrorists, and it's going on. Now, this story, of course, is not new, but I think is a reminder of what the kind of challenges we face. These terrorists are going to use the same tactics, or rather the same mediums that we're using to actually advance objective. Now, two recent things that I think are important for us to bear in mind. Right now, the government, federal government of Somalia has been on the offensive against Al-Shabaab. What the critical aspect behind the recent success has been the buying in of the community, including those militias. Being able to bring the community and mobilize them against Al-Shabaab has been the turning point. However, such enemies and insurgencies tend to be most dangerous when they are on the back foot, because they are going to fire anywhere and everywhere. They're going to try to undertake something like an attack to communicate their relevance. Of course, in recent weeks, we have seen some of our foreign partners issue alerts to their citizens. Now, while sometimes it's not exactly helpful to a country, one thing that reminds us, we need to be extremely vigilant of what is happening around us. Now, at the same time, it's been a few years since a major attack, but that does not mean that Al-Shabaab has not been trying to infiltrate Kenya. The challenge is very few Kenyans understand the kind of efforts that are made on everyday basis by our men and women in uniform and those who are not in uniform in trying to keep us safe. And because this communication, of course, is not in the public domain, we've become extremely reluctant. I walk into different places, into malls, into restaurants, sometimes into places where people are partying. And when you see the cavalier approach to security, it's honestly alarming, you know. And remember, these guys are paying attention. They're paying attention every day, you know. There should be no exceptions. It doesn't matter how important someone is. People need to be searched and need to be searched properly. If they have to be frisked, they need to be frisked properly. But then you have to be on a lookout. And I think because we've been relatively safe, especially in our capitals, we've kind of become a little bit complacent about it. And as we move towards Ramadan, which is my last point, because of the jihadist orientation of this, they like to frame it in ways that they can try to justify it to their sympathizers. And so around Ramadan, they tend to even become more lethal, in part because they can communicate that as martyrdom during the holy month, of course, which is false. But this is a reality, and Ramadan is coming in a month's time or less. And so as we move towards this direction, I think it's very important that we're actually going to remain vigilant. But then we also work together as a nation, because right now we seem to be consumed with politics and a lot of nonsense instead of actually focusing on what matters. And to the extent that we seem to be loosening our foot on the pedal, it may cost us significantly if we actually don't revisit this question of security, and especially the continuing threat of Al-Shabaab. Just perhaps my last point, the recent attack, I think, was it 2 or 3 weeks ago in Congo, was actually undertaken by a Kenyan against a church from Isli. You know, if he can go to undertake it there, amazing. What's going to prevent him from undertaking it here?
Shocking.
So we've slackened off, so to speak. It's been a while since Dusit, Westgate, the Garissa University, and people now, as you go to the malls, to other security or other places where people come in large numbers, those checks and balances are not as robust as before. Even checking or just of the sniff dogs for the cars as well. I don't know what will be your input as well, Professor.
First and foremost, we must understand what Dusit meant for the country and our understanding of the threat of terrorism. Dusit meant that the face of terror is not a Swahili, Arab, Somali. It has changed. It is Wanjiku, Wanjiru, Kamau, Wakesa, Musyoka, and everybody else. So, in other words, we have democratized terror. in terms of inclusivity and so on. Everybody is now in. We can no longer complain that terrorists are certain faces. And Dusit also revealed the intense use of technology in form of communication, in form of money transfer. So what we are seeing as advancement or progress within our own society, the M-Pesa and others, is now part and parcel of the entire network of terror. In other words, terrorism basically uses the same channel that legitimate business and legitimate operations do take. And that basically pushes us to understand the strategies that we have been following as Kenyans, from the KDF, from other forces. And I think we need to boldly take a very retrospective view of what exactly we have been doing with the terror. The original perception of terrorism is that Somalia is the epicenter, and that we are areas of dispersal or expansion. We are more or less victims where the root is Somalia. It's not true. Kenya is now firmly the epicenter of terrorism. And it has already been mentioned that we are even exporting it to Congo and elsewhere. Why? It's because terrorism thrives better through publicity. And Kenya is likely to give a terror attack more publicity than a terror attack somewhere in the middle of southwest Somalia.
Yes.
So it is important to begin now rethinking about what is the epicenter and what is the outflow area. Kenya is no longer an outflow area, it's an epicenter, and we did need to deal with it like that. In the past, our policies have been about building walls between us and Somalia because Somalia is the epicenter. Our policy has been about creating a buffer zone in Jubaland because the terrorists will come from the north. Our perception has been that we are as long as we are able to keep ourselves out of Somalia, then we will not have the problem of terrorism, which is not true. Our other perception is that there are some safe areas because we have friendly Somali clans, around certain areas, that they are enemy clans and friendly clans. They are terrorist-producing clans and terrorism-fighting clans. What Mazrui would call terrorism prone and the prone and opposed. Now the point here is that we need to recast our policy, and that's what I'm doing. The book I'm working on now is basically about trying to recast that, because I happen to have authored 2 of the main books on Kenya's involvement in Somalia. Operation Leader Inchi as a consultant, and now War for Peace in Somalia. And I'm sitting back and beginning to think in 2023, against the Dusit and against the attacks in Boni Forest and Lamu, what is it that we have done wrong? And is the wrong that we have done as a result of good analysis or bad analysis? My view is that we've done a very, very bad analysis in the past, and we have not moved abreast with the threat of terror. Now, it is true what Hashi said, and I don't think that statement is alarmist. Somebody must take that very serious, that the threat of terror is going to be more intense tomorrow than yesterday. And why is it going to be more? Somalia has discovered, the government, particularly of President Hassan Sheikh, that no external power can fight your war against terrorism. You have to have your own people. You don't get the fish until you go into the water. And when you go to the water and you drain the swamps, then you pick the fish on the ground, because fish don't swim on dry land. And therefore, they have decided to turn communities, not to fight Al-Shabaab, to turn communities against Al-Shabaab. And the communities are doing their own war against Al-Shabaab. Are we doing the same in northern Kenya?
No.
Are we doing the same in the communities that are areas of expansion of Al-Shabaab? We saw how Al-Shabaab succeeded along the coast in Kware, Kilifi area, Lamu, and Tana River. They succeeded very well in Peketoni. Have we managed to turn our communities in Kenya as anti-terrorist force? We have not. Because we are focusing on an external enemy, and the enemy is within. So my view, look at the attacks. That much of the attacks are actually happening in areas that are supposed to be extremely friendly. They're not coming from Mandera. They're not coming from Wajir. They are coming actually from Lamu and the Boni forest there. That small area, which largely inhabited by people we would call very friendly to government for centuries, including our Somali clans. So what I'm kind of arguing is that we need to make an introspective look at terrorism rather than considering that there's an epicenter out there which is dispersing terrorists to us. We are actually now the epicenter. Northern Kenya, if you remember the attack on Garissa University,
yes.
The people who were attacking were not largely Somalis from Somalia. They were Kenyans. And they were not poor Kenyans who are unemployed, jobless, and from poor families. These were sons of very noble and well-known people.
Yes.
So in other words, the theory that poverty produced terror is also not true. It is an ideology that can stand on itself, and that's what we have seen. Some of the people who are involved in terror in Kenya are not actually what you can call the dregs or the rumpens of society. They are people who are doing well. We need to revisit our policy very, very seriously. I don't think by 2024, African Transition Mission in Somalia, ATMIS, which replaced AMISOM,
yes.
is supposed to withdraw.
Yes.
Now, when they withdraw,
what next?
What are we going to do us as Kenyans? Given that our policy does not seem to be hacking it. We are not. Jubaland, it's a failure. It's a total failure. Let's agree. It's a total failure. And it was a failure from the beginning, but this is something we don't want to admit, that we just did the capturing of the cities that were friendly to us, controlled by the Mohammed Zubel, Abdullah, and Arian clans, which are friendly to us. We never moved north.
Right. We need to take a short break, and we know how also this Al-Shabaab is affecting projects also in the Lamu area. When you talk about Lapset, many of the turnkey projects cannot continue because of the issue of terrorism there, and that is stalling also development in this country as well. When we circle back, we continue with more. Still, we're looking what really happened with Dusit and how Al-Shabaab menace is still with us as well, even rising to greater proportions right now. We need to take caution. Beware, this is mostly the time or the quarter when they are really active.